So, I was expecting to do a post-mortem on the election, um, but we don't know who won yet. So I'm just going to do just my initial thoughts on how everything played out Tuesday. I'm recording this on, like, what was it, 2:30 on the Thursday following. So we still don't know who the president's going to be. It's likely it'll be for Biden, but there's a couple states that haven't finished counting their votes. And I would say that, for people who are worried about the lawsuits that the Trump administration is doing, not really worth worrying about. It's pretty much standard fare for politics when you're losing a close election. So nothing really crazy there, but there's a lot of other things I wanted to talk about. And I kind of, as somebody who, for those of you who don't know my political affiliation, I'm more progressive, you would call it. I like to call it populism, but people will call it progressive, or some people will say I'm just a radical lefty. But as somebody who feels that way, I'm very frustrated. At first, at least, I was very frustrated because looking at how close it is, and even if Joe Biden wins and all the votes get casted, it's a very close election. This is not what we were promised when we got Joe Biden shoved down our throats and said, oh, you gotta vote for Joe Biden, he's the most electable. That's not the case. Okay? And I can even make that point because there was a lot of props and questions that were voted on all across the country that passed. For example, Florida voted for a $15 minimum wage. A lot of places across the country legalized marijuana or decriminalized it in some cases, and what that means essentially, for those who don't know, decriminalizing it means if you get caught with weed, you don't go to jail. It focuses more on rehab and that kind of stuff. That's like what happened with Oregon, I think. They legalized all drugs within a small margin. They didn't legalize it, they decriminalized it. So if you get caught with it, they send you to rehab rather than prison. Which is all great. I think Colorado voted for, I think it was like 12 weeks of family paid leave or whatever, which is great. And guess what? Those things, legalizing marijuana, $15 minimum wage, family leave, all those things. Even, there was that Fox News poll that came out and said that 72% of people would want government-controlled healthcare. Do those things sound familiar? So, the reason this election was close, in my opinion, and this is just what I was looking at it, is that the populism lane was left completely open. Joe Biden ran on certain things, like he talked about his version, essentially, of the Green New Deal and what he was going to do for that, and, a little bit of other stuff. What he's going to do on healthcare is a little unclear, and frankly, so is it for Trump. He came out and said that, one of the things he would do is try to protect pre-existing conditions. Great, but that's all he had. Right? So if one of these candidates runs on healthcare, they win the goddamn election. Straight up. And that's why I kind of feel not validated. Vindicated was the word I was going to use, but it's basically the same thing. Because it's just so much so much of these campaigns, both campaigns, Trump specifically was focusing on the culture war stuff, the radical socialism, and all that, whatever. And I'll get to that in a second because we're going to talk about the Latino vote, which is super fascinating to me. And that's one of the things about this. And I know a lot of people are freaking out because, oh my God, Trump's not going to leave office. Oh my God, I can't handle another democracy's in trouble. I get that. But there's a lot of this that I personally find very fascinating, right? So let's take a look at this. A lot of like I said, the Trump campaign focused on the culture war stuff, which I'm not into that. I'd rather talk policy. And Joe Biden had a lot of virtue signaling, right? Where putting Kamala on the ticket is going to bring all the ethnic votes to us. And I think the Democratic strategy really needs to be looked at here. Because they spent the whole DNC focusing on these gettable Republicans and these people they're switching from, Trump to Biden and all this nonsense. Trump did better with Republicans this election than he did in 2016. He did better with every demographic other than white males. He did better with white females. He did better with black males. He did better with black women and the Latino vote, of course. And let's talk about the Latino vote and why that is specifically, right? So people talk about the Southern Florida Cubans who took the message of socialism bad and took that to heart and ran off with it. That's true. Here's the problem. That doesn't apply to all Latinos, right? Because you got to reconcile the fact that in the primary, Bernie Sanders had two big demographics, being young white people and Latinos. So the thing about Latinos is their demographics are even split up further. So Cubans are vastly different from Mexicans, who are vastly different from Spanish people, and it's a whole different mishmash. And Latinos in and of themselves are very weird to place because they're very strong against immigration. They're strong on gun rights. But they believe in abortion, they believe in legalization of marijuana, and they believe in Medicare for all. So that doesn't fit with any political system. So now the reason that the Trump administration won them is because he talked to them. He offered them something, which is jobs. Technically, Trump hasn't really done that or didn't really come up with a plan to do that, but that doesn't matter because he was talking about it. He reached out to the Latino community, and that's why he was able to pass it. But win with them, and that's what led to that. And that's it's a very interesting thing to think about, especially when you look at Texas, because he did win Latino Texans as well. So, but apparently the breakdown is the older white Republican in Texas doesn't like the strong message on immigration. And not that they want open borders. I think most people don't want open borders, but it's a tough messaging conflict that they have because the Latinos like the harshness on immigration and the white folks don't. So if you're a Texan Republican, it's hard to reconcile those two things, and that's going to be interesting to see what's going forward. So while we're speaking on going forward, I'm going to talk about where we go from here. Now, I think that it is very clear that America has spoken and want a more progressive / populist approach to their politics. Because of the things I just mentioned, because of the $15 minimum wage, all the legalization of drugs, and all those kind of things. That's what makes me think that. Now, we've talked about the Democratic strategy here, and why it failed. They will take the wrong lesson from this. They will say that they couldn't separate themselves from people like AOC, and we look like socialists, and that scared a lot of people, so we're going to move even further right. That's what's going to happen. Well, that's what I think is going to happen. And I'm already starting to see it a little bit. But I think the Republican side is actually way worse in the sense that it won't talk about the populism message that's been shown across the country. It'll talk about that see socialism was bad, and we just need to go all in on this culture war nonsense. That's what they're going to take away from this. No one will learn the right lesson, and especially because like right now it's looking that Joe Biden will win, which he will, and the Senate will stay red. So all those stimulus talks, there's not going to be any stimulus. We're going to be left to suffer. The Republicans are going to own it to Joe Biden, which you can argue whether he should own it in that situation or not. We'll see how things play out. But it's probably just going to be like 2010, where they're going to, pin the blame of the economy and everything on the president, and then in the midterms, Republicans take the Senate and the House. That's probably what's going to happen. But I don't know. There's a lot more information coming in, and maybe later, once we get some more information, I'll do a full postmortem. I may do a couple videos up in the next couple weeks talking about the stuff that's going on with the Trump administration, break that down a little bit, and break down some other states, because there's a lot of interesting information out there. But I just wanted to get this out, just kind of my thoughts that have been rattling off in my head, because I've found this all very fascinating. But and we could talk about the polls too. Like, this was just a huge poll mess. I don't know what happened, but this is crazy. But anyway, that's going to do it.